Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is June 30th, 2022. Lovely day. Lots of stuff going on. Markets are, of course, reflecting the macro. And I guess crypto's in a bear market. So hope everybody's having fun. But, bear markets are great from a perspective of building. As I say, you have Build-A-Bear. Bulls all about growth and adoption, and bears are all about getting things done. So it is good to return to the time of getting things done. And let's talk about what's going on with Cardano for probably the rest of the year. And so I'll share my screen a little bit. Share screen. Wah! There we go. Okay. So as you guys know, Vossel is currently underway. We forked the testnet. So the testnet, as of, I believe, July 3rd, is going to be running version 1.3.5. And we might do a 0.1 because there's a few extra things to clean up. Now that's going to run all the way to end of July. And then you guys finally get Vossel. Spend a hell of a time testing it. It's actually, as I've mentioned, the most complicated hard fork that's ever been done for Cardano, but that's okay. Then there's this question of, well, what next? And really, there are 4 development tracks that are running concurrently. So one track is the Shelley cleanup. And the Shelley cleanup are things like partial delegation, proxy keys. No, we haven't forgot about them. I yell a lot about these types of things, as well as peer-to-peer and Genesis. So there's a collection of stuff that is quantified. We know about it. People are working on it. And it's hard. We're getting it done. But it's a cleanup. Then there's the Goguen stuff. Vossel is the first Goguen cleanup hard fork. So basically added a bunch of new features and capabilities. Now on the Goguen stuff, there's a lot more things. Like, for example, we need to kind of get something better than the PAB documentation, more syntactic sugar, optimizations of the language, and obviously a lot of cool things that the community's been requesting. But actually Vossel is covering a big chunk of it, but there's a lot of Goguen stuff that remains. Then there is Basho stuff. Now, Basho, really it breaks down to sidechains, Mithril, and input endorsers. Okay, so Mithril's under construction. That team is a 2-week release cadence, and they're making great progress. They're currently in sprint 7, I think, 6 or 7. And they're making progress with it. Now, sidechains, we have paper coming out, I believe, around August-ish. That's going to explain how we upgrade OPFT to do quorum sampling and run sidechains, and then kind of some of the bridge discussion and so forth. But that's looking pretty good. And then throughout the summer, we're working on the input endorsers official paper and specification, and that's going to rely heavily on Mithril and extended UTXO. But the long and the short is that these 3 things together, alongside the work stream that we're doing with Hydra, which is also underway, is a phenomenal starting point. Thank you. Is a phenomenal starting point for true scalability, because you get the interoperability and scalability. The sidechains idea in Mithril is really the foundation of interoperability. Hydra is really an adapt accelerator, and also allows to backfill in the microtransactions use case. And then input endorsers basically gets rid of any consensus bottleneck in the system. Everything is network constrained there on out. So it's super high TPS. So all of this is actually very well in hand. There's a large team on Hydra, team on Mithril, team on sidechains, and an R&D applied research team that's on input endorsers with a spec coming. Then we have number 4, which is Voltaire. Now, Voltaire is interesting. We have a lot of programs like Catalyst. And Catalyst has gotten to a point where there's just about to be a massive surge in voting, because there's going to be the voting center. Okay. We're going to have things like, well, we already have it, dreps. And then there's obviously, how do you link Catalyst to mainnet? Because right now it's running as a kind of a permission sidechain, and it needs to be linked. So it overlaps with some of the Basho agenda. And then there's the question of, okay, protocol governance and the bureaucracy behind updates. All right. So protocol governance, these are things like the initiation of the hard fork combinator, changes to parameters. These are things like the SIP process. There's a lot of other things to think about too when you talk about construction of a protocol and updating of a protocol and these types of things. For example, treasury management. Okay. So with Voltaire, when Cardano was started, the original intent, you had this tripartite structure, Emergo, CF, and IOHK. And one would take care of governance, one would take care of ecosystem growth, and one would take care of technical. Now, there's been lots of back and forth and issues, like, for example, the CF with the Michael Parsons era was quite challenging. And we can litigate the past and talk about these things, but the long and the short is that that structure hasn't been perfect. And in particular, one of the things that I really wanted to see built over the last 7 years was this idea of a members-based organization that would effectively run the bureaucracy of protocol governance. This was kind of my hope for the CF, but the Stiftung structure in Switzerland is kind of not so good for that. So earlier this year, we had a long conversation with the CF in a series of workshops. And basically, long and short is, how do we move this bureaucracy behind this from this tripartite structure, which was always ephemeral, to a members-based organization, and members are defined by merit, and we'll get to that in a second, and somehow find a good custodian for it. So the CF stepped up. They hired a guy named Dirk, and Dirk is kind of a legend in the open source software community. He worked with Linus Torvalds very extensively, is co-founder of the Linux Foundation. He kind of gets open source projects much better than I do, or anyone else in the ecosystem, because he's been just doing it for so long. And we spun out, I'd say, somewhere almost 50 people. If you look at all the contractors, individuals, and other people that are working between the CF and IO, and they've been working since February, basically at the construction of this members-based org. And I believe there's going to be an announcement about the specific structure in September. But basically, this org will have a governance steering committee, a technical steering committee, and then other committees that are related to things like growth and adoption, and then a SIP committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, these committees will make decisions about, for example, roadmap. They'll make suggestions for SIPs and a litany of other things, strategy. And I say, well, Charles, that sounds great, but I wasn't consented in this. Well, that's why we want to move to a bicameral model. So the bicameral model basically says that the bureaucracy proposes and the ADA holder votes. So the basic idea is that after the Vossel hard fork, it's very likely the next hard fork combinator will be packaged as a special type of update proposal, and we'll write a SIP to basically be the standard for that. And then it goes to the ADA holders and they vote for it. And then it gets signed by the SIP committee. The update keys were connected to these three entities. And the intent was always to create a decentralized update system. In fact, we wrote a paper with the European Union with a Horizon 2020 grant to kind of explore how to do that. And there's a lot of technical complexity in it. So kind of a nice halfway house is to create a members-based organization, have a SIP committee, and the committee controls an M of N set of keys, but they actually can't sign without approval from the ADA holders. So they write an update proposal to take it to the ADA holders. The ADA holders say, we're okay with it. And then they can sign the proposal and submit the proposal. So then the question is, well, what do we mean by a merit-based, members-based organization? Merit and members-based, so an MMM org. Merit and members-based org. Well, either you pay or you work. So either you do something or you contribute some funding, or both. Pretty simple, pretty easy to understand. So you kind of have to allow a set of people in the ecosystem to grow and evolve to a point where those people are capable of participating. So that's effectively what the DREPs are and what the SPOs are and what the dApp developers are, if you think about it, alongside people who take a community role. So we have the ambassador program. We have about 1,000 plus projects here. We have 3,000 stake pool operators, and then obviously a large core of DREPs are forming. These are not pairwise disjoint sets. There's an overlap, and that's a good thing. But if you look at that set, that's a very large group of people, thousands and thousands of people floating around. And the basic idea is to say, okay, well, take the next step, join a members-based organization. There's going to be a lot of committees, and some will be on the governance steering committee, technical steering committees, growth and adoption committees, et cetera, be standards committees, these types of things, and actually get involved in the governance process. You say, but Charles, how will you set up committees that are effective? Well, that's CF hired this guy. The work that he did at the Linux Foundation runs over 140 plus projects, from Kubernetes to Node to cryptocurrency projects like Fabric, so the entire Hyperledger group, even an Ethereum node called Besu. So there's a lot of decentralization there, and there's a lot of organizational wisdom in these types of models. And that's basically what we're pursuing in this end. In September, we can have the first setup. Between now and September, in July and August, we're going to set up a website for signups. So whoever wants to be part of this members-based organization in some capacity can sign up. And then either you pay the membership fee to the organization, or you contribute some sort of work to the organization, or both. That's one side of it. Another side is we need to get more people working for Cardano. So you may have noticed that Seba from DC Spark, he's now a SIP editor, and his role is covered completely by the Cardano blockchain itself. So I told Harris over at the Catalyst Project, I said, I'd really like to see 3 to 5 more community members become SIP editors who are paid for completely by the Cardano blockchain. I'd also like to see 10 to 15 full-time engineers work directly for Cardano, paid for by Cardano. So this will be a big pillar of Fund 10, hopefully. And I'd love to see you guys propose, because it's time that we actually get a complete group of people that work for Cardano. That's the entire point of the system. With this members-based organization, it's actually pretty easy to do that too, because the members can just directly get funded from Catalyst after it's been bootstrapped. But it'd be nice to have individuals, in addition to companies, actually do that. It's a nice checks and balance. So it's just something to think about. If you have the technical abilities to write code, and or if you have the ability to read SIPs and be part of that process, jobs are opening up. It's going to be something that comes very soon before the end of the year. But yeah, I hope this helps a little bit. I guess what I'm trying to convey is that it's a lot of cleanup. There is still some innovation left to do that it's going to bleed into 2023. And that's fun and exciting. But really, we've gotten to the juncture where we're just about to have a major inflection point where this structure is gone and we're moving to fundamentally different structures. there's been an enormous amount of learning along the way. I'd have done things very, very, very differently if I got a do-over as a project founder of how to put things together and how to think about things. But, to be fair, we had to live 7 years of history, and, we had to go through a lot of events to get to this point. And the fact that we're now imminently at the existence of a massive members-based organization that's going to be able to provide proper representation of the community for roadmap and strategy and these types of things, and has a consent component from voting, is pretty exciting to me. So a lot of good people are working on this, and I can't wait to make the announcement in September. I'll be at some event for that. Can't say anything about it right now. I signed a mutual NDA with the CF, but a lot of good things are happening there. Some house cleaning in terms of like the update committee, these types of things, has to be done. And that's always been the case. And, there's also house cleaning that needs to be done with other stuff like the proxy keys and partial delegation and so forth. We still are number one for GitHub commits as an ecosystem. And actually the push out of Vassal, even though it's so complicated, has been pretty seamless. And we've received as an ecosystem phenomenal advice and collaborations with the community as a whole. The reality is Cardano is not controlled by a person or even an entity or a collection of entities. It truly is one of the most decentralized of all cryptocurrencies in this respect, because it has this gigantic, super smart community that's working towards an end. And some legacy has to be removed and cleaned up. Some training wheels have to be clipped off. And sometimes it takes a little longer than you think. But there's an intent to do it. And the community is going to make sure that this gets done. But we need a North Star. And I thought a lot about this because you think about legacy as you kind of finish out things and you just go back to your farm. So what is our North Star, our guiding light behind these types of things? Well, the North Star is this concept of decentralization. Okay, that's one of them. There are many North Stars, but this is the big one that I think we can tackle this year. So we're setting up something called the Edinburgh Decentralization Index. It's going to be based at University of Edinburgh, and obviously it's going to measure decentralization of cryptocurrencies. So throughout the summer, some papers are going to be written. A lab is going to be set up that's actually governed by the University of Edinburgh. And the team at the lab is going to start with Bitcoin and then move on to Ethereum and then move on to Cardano and keep going and actually create an index. Well, we don't know where we're going to fall on this index. Some of it might be great. Some of it may not be so great. It'll aggregate together and we'll get a score. What's cool is then the governance steering committee of the open source program can make an agenda and strategy of how do we improve that? How do we make that better? So you really have to have a collection of North Stars. You have to have a collection, a constellation of stars that allow you to steer the project in a particular direction. Some of that is decentralization, some of that is resilience, some of that is effectiveness and cost, some of that is use and utility. And we did our best with the initial roadmap to try to balance all of these different types of concerns. It didn't make everybody happy all the time. For example, being slow to market with smart contracts meant that Cardano missed a lot of the DeFi stuff that's happening today. And in 2021, people thought we were horrible and idiots, and we got brutally criticized. And they said, oh, look how stupid these guys are and how ineffective they are. Now that seems to actually be a benefit as the DeFi markets come collapsing down and exponential losses are occurring. We just simply didn't play in those waters, and so we didn't get bitten by those sharks. Something to think about. But that was out of an abundance of caution. Could have had smart contracts as an ecosystem probably a little earlier, but there wouldn't have been as much careful thought that was put into the development model. And ultimately, we would also be suffering from the many, many hacks, protocol design flaws, and other problems that the cryptocurrency ecosystem is now working its way through, and may actually destroy several major cryptocurrencies. Has already destroyed Luna, and it's destroyed Celsius, and more to come as exponential risk continues to scale. So roadmaps are hard, and you have to kind of wait for the right people to materialize, and now the time is. There are D-reps. There's a huge amount of SPOs. In fact, Community is going to have a big event in Colorado, the Rare Bloom event. I had nothing to do with putting it on. It might have more than 1,000 or 2,000 people. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. Community events just materializing out of thin air happened in Brazil, happening all across the world. It's pretty special in that respect. So everybody's ready for it. Now, it would have been nice to have a members base org 5 years ago. That was the intent, and Chairman Parsons decided to focus more on his own needs than the community needs. But a resilient ecosystem should have the ability to course correct and get rid of those bad actors, which is what happened. It did, unfortunately, leave us with a legacy structure that was never going to be fit for purpose to be members-based. So a new one had to be constructed and embedded inside a structure that made sense. Slows it down a little bit, but the intent is still there. And that means you can move all kinds of things over. And that's what's happening now. If you want to be part of it, website's coming, signups are coming, and we'd love to have you there. If not, well, vote. Your ADA gives you a voice, gives you a vote. And moving forward, it's going to become more and more important, and you have to spend more and more time. We'll do our best to try to provide objective guiding stars, like decentralization. It's a foundational one. But then there's also others that need to be thought about carefully, and that's moving on its way. Overall, it's a pretty remarkable thing if you think about it. It started as nothing, just an idea. And we've all got on this journey together, if you think about it. From an idea in 2015 on a whiteboard to this technological leviathan. Cardano has really been the moon landing of the blockchain ecosystem, if you think about it. You know, we wrote more than 100 papers, so much code, brought together a global movement. Some of the brightest people in the world have worked on this project or continue to work on this project. And we paid homage to great people along the way, like Voltaire and Basho. And we tried to stay true to some basic concepts and principles about a desire to increasingly decentralize and build up a group of people that are going to be here for a long time. I believe we have the strongest community of any cryptocurrency, and we'll continue to have the strongest community because people really get the intention and where we're going. And yeah, it's been difficult at times. It was a hell of a job getting Shelly out. That was very sad panda. There was a lot of work there. And Goguen hasn't exactly been the easiest of things. I really wish we could have launched with Vossel instead of where we were at in September with Alonzo. But you guys stuck to it. And that didn't stop people from building all kinds of cool things like Cornucopias and Wing Riders and MinSwap and Measly Swap and Sunday Swap and all the other things, Liquid and Orbit and so forth. That's pretty impressive if you think about it. And with Vossel, more will come. And a lot of advice will come down the pipe about things that need to improve, be easier, libraries need to be built, documentation needs to be done. There are people here to do this from now more than 15 companies. Just on the core side. And the fact that we can roll all of them over into a members-based organization is pretty impressive. So the second half of the year is a time for reflection. It's a time for debate. It's a time for cleanup. It's a time to really dig deep and get everybody in the right place. That's what we're going to be working on real hard. And with Vossel, I think in pipelining with Vossel, I think there's enough headroom there for you guys to go and build lots of really interesting things on Cardano. And then I can get to the business of RealFi, which is what I've always wanted to do. I built Cardano so that I could go in and bank the unbanked and get 3 billion people to have a financial operating system that they don't have right now. That's my personal mission. It doesn't have to be yours. And Cardano is an open protocol. Anybody can use it any way that they want to use it. I built it for that purpose. And I'd like to spend a big chunk of my life pursuing that. But I need a good foundation for it. And that's what we're doing right now. We're finalizing those last elements of the foundation as an ecosystem. It's a great time to do it. Bear markets are where everybody gets much more collaborative. More people are willing to join and work with you. And people actually pick up the phone. Bull markets are crazy. Poaching is at an all-time high. People are very hostile. Extremely negative language is used. And inhuman things happen. And that's okay. I mean, this is just the nature of the cycles. I've been through, I think, 6 of them now. So depending on how you count bulls and bears in the market. So I'm used to it. I'll never quite get used to the arrogant maximalism and brutal comments that people make, or the betrayals. But I have gotten used to the fact that people behave differently when economic incentives are aligned that way. It is what it is, and you accept it. One thing that's remained constant, though, bull or bear, the Cardano community is here to stay. And each and every one of you continue, whenever asked, to step up to the occasion and get it done. So come July and August, the website's coming out, and just kind of we'll have a sketch out of different things that need doing. And if you want to be part of the members-based org, we'll go ahead and sign up, and then we can roll you over. In September, I'll make an announcement of the name of that, how that's going to work, the legal structures behind it. A lot of little things that need to be done, like legal wrappers need to be put together and a bunch of little things like that. So it's a lot of cleanup, as I mentioned. And post-fossil on the code side, an enormous amount of cleanup, technical debt reduction, re-architecture. And then obviously we're pushing for a lot of the backlog to kind of work its way through. All right, everybody. Until next time, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.